Okay, let's go live. All right. How's it going, everybody? Chuck Holton here. I'm coming to you from Bangor, Maine today. And I wonder if we have any Mainers watching the show. If you're from Maine, do me a favor, post in the chat where you're watching from. Uh, I'd be interested to know if we've got anybody in Maine that's watching. We did run into some friends in Newark last night who watched the show. And when we were on our way here, we're just up here to see the fall colors and spend some time with my grandkids, have a few days off over the weekend. And so we are really looking forward to that. And that's why I'm getting started a little earlier than usual today, because I've got to go pick my grandkids up from the airport. And and my daughter and her husband too. Yeah, I mean, I guess they're important, but we just want to see the grandkids. We got people from the UK, Pennsylvania, Poland, Idaho, Connecticut, Nebraska, Indiana, Ontario, Finland, Florida, Woodbridge, Illinois, Sweden. Awesome. So is just checking to make sure you can hear me and everything. It looks like you can. So let's get into it today. We're kind of in a pivotal moment. We've got this ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. It's just taken effect, but this is not the end of the story. This is going to be, I think you could call it a fragile opening act. So I'm going to walk you through what the agreement actually contains in detail, what's expected to follow in the coming days and weeks, and the high stakes variables that are kind of at play here. Why President Trump did not win the Nobel Peace Prize, even though this was a very big feather in his cap for sure. And his included planned visit on Monday to Israel, or I guess over the weekend he's coming. He's going to be addressing the Knesset on Sunday. We're going to talk about some things that could unravel the deal, and we're going to talk about the hidden angles and warning signs the media is not going to emphasize. And then last but not least, we're going to talk about some of the jokers that I have used in my answering idiots sections, like Scott Ritter and Colonel McGregor. And we're going to go back and look at some of their predictions for how this war would turn out and have some fun with that. So speaking of having fun, here's a fun fact. For the first time ever, the world's central banks are now holding more gold than U.S. treasuries. And that's a big deal. I mean, it's something that really has not happened in living memory. And so the same people who print the money don't even want to hold it anymore. When the folks behind the curtain start quietly hoarding gold, maybe they know something that you don't. So while Washington keeps spending like a teenager with daddy's credit card, the rest of the planet is saying, "No, I'll take something real, thanks." And that's why smart people and smart countries are buying gold. And it just went over $4,000 an ounce, but it could go to 5 before too long. So you should be buying gold as well. Preserve Gold makes it easy. They'll help you move a chunk of your IRA or your 401k into physical, real gold and silver. If you had done that at the beginning of this year, you'd be up over 40% already. This is stuff you can actually hold, not digits on a government spreadsheet, because when the world's bankers stop trusting the dollar, maybe it's time you should stop as well. So go to preservegold.com/hotzone or text the word Chuck to 50505. That's preservegold.com/hotzone or text Chuck to 50505. Do that before the Fed decides your money is just a suggestion. All right, so let's get down to this breakdown of the ceasefire as it goes into effect. Now, the first thing I want to show you is President Trump announcing the ceasefire, and let's listen to what he had to say.
Last night we reached a momentous breakthrough in the Middle East, something that people said was never going to be done. We ended the war in Gaza and really, on a much bigger basis, created peace And I think it's going to be a lasting peace, hopefully an everlasting peace. Peace in the Middle East. We secured the release of all of the remaining hostages, and they should be released on Monday or Tuesday.
So that's what he had to say. I know that's a little bit quiet, as loud as I could get it. Um, so he's hoping it's an everlasting peace. Of course, we all hope for an everlasting peace. We pray for peace in Jerusalem. Uh, I don't know that, I mean, that might be a little optimistic, but everybody is certainly grateful to President Trump. As a matter of fact, the J Post put a picture of President Trump on its cover. There are pictures and billboards going up all over Jerusalem and all over Israel with President Trump's picture saying, "Thank you, President Trump, for what you did to get this done." And it bears pointing out that Joe Biden couldn't get this done with all the pressure he was putting on Israel. He was actually prolonging the war. I think that's clear to see now, without a question. President Biden, by not standing behind Israel, by holding back weapons, by trying to stop Israel. Remember they wanted them to stop. They wanted to stop them from going into Rafah. They wanted to stop them from any hostage rescue operations. They wanted to stop them from striking Khan Yunis. They got, after them for striking hospitals, which turned out to be Hamas headquarters. And all of that just encouraged Hamas to hold out a little longer and prolong the war. President Trump, by not encouraging Hamas, by standing behind Israel, by giving Israel the things that they needed to win, by helping Israel strike down Iran and encouraging them in terms of what they were doing in Yemen by helping with that, and in Syria and in Lebanon as well. President Trump made great strides toward bringing a conclusion to this war. Now, it wasn't just President Trump. It's important for us to go back at this juncture and talk about the cost, especially for the Israeli people. So if we look at this, where's my, well, here's here's the aftermath of what parts of Gaza look like. This is Rafah, by the way, and this is exactly what Hamas wanted. They knew this was going to happen. Hamas knew that it doesn't matter how badly Gaza gets destroyed, the world is going to step up and give them money to replace it with all new stuff. And you're going to see that in the days and weeks to come. You're going to see uh, countries around the world pumping money into Gaza, and that money will be used to rebuild what Israel destroyed. You can bet that some of that money is going to come from the American taxpayer, just because we just end up paying for everything. Even if President Trump doesn't want that to happen, there's a good chance that it will happen, because President Trump pays for, Americans just end up paying for everything. Now, this is the Wikipedia page about casualties of the Gaza war. And I want to point out one thing, because it shows uh, as of October 7th, 2025, that'd be just 3 days ago, they show 68,172 Palestinians have been killed. Now that, again, those numbers come directly from Hamas. So take it for what it's worth. And it's important to point that out every time. But a lot of media very dishonestly has stopped pointing out that these numbers come from Hamas, and that Hamas has a vested interest in pumping up those numbers and making them sound weird. But actually, now we're seeing a lot of American politicians and activists across the world, they don't use that number 68,000. That's not enough. They're using the number 660,000 people have died in Gaza. Well, that's patently untrue. There's no proof of that. There's absolute proof that that didn't happen. But they just picked a number out of thin air to make it sound more like a genocide. But let's look at the Israelis that have died in this war. This is interesting to me. If we go to this footnote here, here's what it pulls up. We get 1,022 civilians killed. And here's how that breaks down: 828 civilians killed on October 7th, including foreigners or dual national citizens, and up to 14 Israeli civilians killed by the Israeli military as part of the Hannibal Directive. And this is something that I've talked about several times before. A lot of people get confused about the Hannibal Directive. The Hannibal Directive just basically says that Israel has to prioritize the security of its country. And if it looks like their country is being overrun, that they have to employ whatever violence to stop that, even if the enemy is using Israelis as human shields. So what they're saying is, we're not going to use the fact that there are Israelis in the way being held hostage as we're not going to let that limit us on what we do to protect our country. It's not, as some people think, Israel's plan to wipe out its own people. I've never understood how you could believe that. But so I pointed this out to somebody the other day in the kibbutz Be'eri when I visited on the, I don't know, 9th or 10th of October 2023. And there were still bodies and parts of bodies laying around in the streets and being picked up around there. It was an absolute smoking. I mean, everything was on, had been burned. It was still smoking, still smoldering. There were some Israelis who died in the battle to retake Be'eri because the terrorists were using them as human shields. And the terrorists were shooting at the IDF from behind Israeli civilians. Some of those Israeli civilians died. Now, obviously, they're going to try to minimize that as much as possible, but it happened. And so they believe up to 14 Israeli civilians were killed by Israeli troops as they were trying to kill off the terrorists that remained in their country. 82 hostages in Gaza are confirmed dead, including 34 that have not been retrieved yet, of which 11 were soldiers. That leaves 71 confirmed civilians hostage deaths. 46 people have died on the Lebanese border, many of those from rockets and missiles that have been sent across. Three Israelis have died in Alexandria, Egypt. That was, they were tourists, I guess. 2 embassy staff members died in Washington, D.C., in the United States. You remember that shooting. 24 civilians, Israelis, have died in the West Bank in Israel by March 5th, 2025. Not including 2 mistakenly killed by Israeli forces, one in Jerusalem and one in the West Bank. That's because there was a terror attack going on where Palestinians were shooting or stabbing people. A civilian that was armed came out to try to stop them. He was seen by IDF troops or police, and they actually mistook him for the terrorist and shot the civilian. But that's just fog of war. That happens. Uh, so that brings a total to 35 conflict-related deaths to date, plus 3 in the Gaza Strip, 3 civilians, 3 at the Allenby Bridge between Jordan and Israel, and 29 in the 2024 Iran-Israel conflict and the Iran-Israel war, including 2 that died indirectly. 2 people have been killed by hundreds of Houthi missile and drone attacks. The Houthis continue to sort of clown themselves and show the world how absolutely ineffective they are. They've shot so many missiles and drones, and most of them don't even make it to Israel, but they have gotten lucky twice and killed 2 Israeli civilians with that. Then on top of the civilian deaths, we've got 961 total security forces that died, including 881 Israeli Defense Force soldiers, 70 Israeli police officers, 10 Shin Bet personnel, and not including those who were also IDF soldiers. All right. So we've got about 400 and I think 60 something IDF troops that have died in the fighting in Gaza alone. But the total, including the number of Israeli troops that died on October 7th, comes to 961 total security forces killed. So obviously uh, that's a number one, the longest war Israel has ever fought. Number two, a very costly war in terms of men and materiel and economic losses for Israel. However, now let's go back and look at the total number of dead in Gaza alone. Now, the total number of dead in Gaza is harder to come up with because, again, the only numbers that we're being given are from the Gaza Health Ministry, which is run by Hamas. And let me go back to my camera here. And so um, that makes it difficult because there could be people that are still trapped in the rubble someplace. Uh, we've seen proof several times of the Gaza Health Ministry sort of making up numbers that then all of a sudden 1,100 people come back to life. And of course, they don't break out the number of militants versus civilians. So they just classify everybody as civilians and just sort of randomly picked the number 70%. They say 70% of the dead are women and children. Now, what they're calling children, somebody who's 21 years old, they're still calling a kid. Obviously, a lot of the fighters that are being taken out by Israel might be 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. And the fact that they are fighting Israel, that they are obvious combatants, does not stop the Gaza Health Ministry from reporting them as children. So again, it's kind of harder to tell, but let's just take GHF at their word. Let's talk about that. If the GHF, I'm sorry, not GHF. If the IDF killed 68,000 or 70,000 people, number one, it goes to show that it's not profitable to attack Israel because Israel lost 1,000 or 2,000 total or something, and the numbers are just wildly skewed in terms of that. Now, Israel says that they have cataloged more than 20,000, I think it's closer to 25,000 militants that have been killed. These are people that they took out in the act of fighting Israel, resisting Israel, people who were armed, people who were, shooting at Israelis. Israel at first just left the bodies out there, but later on they decided, no, if Palestinians can use bodies as leverage, so can we. So they started collecting the dead and storing them in Israel. And now some of those are going to get returned I believe for every Israeli hostage, deceased Israeli hostage that is returned, they're going to get like 35 Palestinian fighters' bodies back, given back to the Palestinians. But this is something that was pointed out on Amir Tsarfati's channel. I just want to read this because this is important. The Gaza war recorded the lowest civilian to combat ratio in modern warfare. Despite being fought under some of the most difficult and complex battlefield conditions any military has ever faced, Israel's forces confronted a literal underground war machine, a vast network of tunnels and command centers deliberately built beneath residential neighborhoods, hospitals, schools, and mosques. To make matters worse, the enemy's combatants never wore uniforms. They intentionally blurred the line between civilians and fighters. That's against the Geneva Conventions. They located their military sites inside hospitals, schools, mosques, and children's centers and things like that. Again, in contravention of the Geneva Conventions. So the harsh reality is that a large portion of the civilian population supported what Hamas was doing, and still to this day supports their ideology. I'll show you some more of that in a minute. They gladly served as human shields, informants, and helped with the logistics of sustaining Hamas's terror operations. So, despite this, Israel's leadership has often chosen to absorb further losses of their own troops, greater military losses for the IDF, rather than risk civilian casualties among an enemy that's deeply embedded within its own people. This policy, which is shaped by elitist academics and policymakers who are detached from the battlefield and the realities of Jewish life, has come at a devastating cost to Israelis. There are literally hundreds of Israeli troops that are dead today simply because Israel decided to hold itself to a much higher standard. A much higher standard, of course, than Hamas, which wants civilians to die on both sides, but also a higher military standard than any other military on planet Earth, including the United States. So, in the battle for Fallujah, for example, I've pointed this out many times. The number of casualties, civilian casualties, that were sustained was a ratio of about 3 or 4 to 1 for every militant or Al Qaeda fighter that we killed. So the United States killed 3 or 4 times as many civilians as Israel has killed per capita in this war. And you didn't see marches. You didn't see people, ICC putting out a arrest warrant for our president. You didn't see, all of the international opprobrium from the United Nations and everything. Matter of fact, I don't think there was one UN resolution condemning the United States during the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. If there was, it wasn't anything near what they've done for Israel. And so what that shows is that these people, they don't actually care about the Palestinians. They care about destroying Israel. And we see that here. I'm going to show you a couple of just tweets here. Here's one that says, a ceasefire is cool, but wiping Israel off the map, world map, is even better. This is from the Ginger Arab. Uh, I mean, you're seeing lots and lots of statements like that. As a matter of fact, the globalized, the Intifada crowd around the globe is not happy about this whole ceasefire thing. They don't. They're not real excited about this because what this means is, oh gosh, now maybe our funding is going to dry up, and we're going to have to go find something else to protest about. But so what they're saying is that this is not over. The Intifada is not over. We're going to continue to fight, and we're not going to stop. So before, folks, we got 1,800 people watching. Do me a favor, hit the like button and make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. I want to stop right here and just thank all of you who donated to help little Leah, a little South African girl that we met in Panama, who has cystic fibrosis. Leah and her family moved to Panama to get away from the violence in South Africa. And we interviewed her and her father the other day, and it's just a gut-wrenching story. But her treatment, she was circling the drain. She was unable to walk. She'd gotten to the point, she's 8 years old. She'd gotten to the point where she couldn't go to the bathroom. She couldn't walk. She couldn't play. And she was dying. There's no two ways about that. Some friends gathered up some money and got her a stem cell treatment that I personally have had done as well. And it's had a huge effect on her health. She's gained almost 20 pounds. She's looking much better. Her oxygen use is down about 13%. And so now they're hoping to get another stem cell treatment for her, twice as powerful, twice as much stem cells, to see if they can get her off oxygen completely and let her have a more normal life. And so we mentioned that on day before yesterday's podcast. You guys blew me away. We were trying to raise $6,500 for Leah's treatment, and I just want to show you what we have ended up raising. Let's see if I can find. This is her before and after pictures, and let's see if I can. Okay, here's what I'll do. I'll put this over here, and we'll go right like that. Okay, there we go. Now I can show you. Here's the Give, Send, Go that we made for Leah. And that's her before picture. So she looks a lot better now. But this is just amazing to me. You guys raised not $6,500. You raised $21,438 to help Leah get better. And I'm just flabbergasted. I mean, all of you continued giving, even though you could see we had already met the goal that we set. But you're so generous, and you wanted to help, and you wanted to join us in what we're doing for her family, that you continued to give. And now we're up to 21,000. Actually, we're a little higher than that because there's some money that was given over on YouTube and other places. So we're about $23,000 now in giving. And I think we have figured out a way to give it all to them without having to pay taxes on it. So that's even better. And I just want to show you on the way to the airport. Was that just last night? No, night before last. We stopped by Leah's house on the 8 o'clock at night, something like that. And I want to show you what we did when we surprised her family and told them how much we had raised. At that point, it was only 15,000. But take a listen. Good. How are you?
Hi, Rudy. How are you?
We were driving by, and I just thought we'd stop for a second and just see how you're doing.
I'm good.
See how things are going. Just wanted to let you know, I told my people on my podcast today about Leah.
Yes.
And in about an hour, we raised $15,000 for her.
I was getting goosebumps.
So, brother, I think she's going to get the stem cell treatment, and we'll probably get you a month ahead on the bills. So. Hi.
Hi, I'm Lisa.
This is Rudy's
Mama
wife.
Lisa.
I just was telling your husband that I have a YouTube channel, and I told them about Leah today on my YouTube channel, and in about an hour and a half, they raised $15,000 for Leah's stem cell treatment and whatever else you guys need. So it's still going. We don't know exactly how much it'll end up with. We're going to have to take a little bit out of that for taxes, but we're going to try to donate it and make it as profitable for you guys as we can, and maybe let you take a day off.
Hi, sweetheart. This is my daughter.
This is his oldest daughter,
Matilda.
You're lovely.
Leah. Hi, Leah. There she is up on the porch. Hi, honey.
So, anyway, we're on our way to the city, and I wanted to stop and give you guys the news.
That was
So.
awesome news.
That's why the camera's on you.
Hey, and it's not me. It's not me. It is all the great people on my Hot Zone podcast from all over the world, even some people from South Africa who are on there, and they're just so generous. They've done this for many people around the world, and So,
But we have to thank you because if it wasn't for you, none of this would have been possible.
so if you go watch
Thank you.
the lives that I did today, you can see the little piece that we put together from your interview.
All right.
And I can send you the link for the full interview that we just got it all edited. So.
Oh, thank you very much.
All right.
Jack.
We had to leave all your pictures and stuff out because YouTube will.
Yeah,
cancel us if
That's
we-
a bit
yeah,
too
sorry.
crude. Nothing like you. I think you've seen before
Of
on being
course.
in Iraq and everything.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
I didn't think they will allow some of
Anyway.
it.
So, have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
So I was trying to put a picture up there of us with Leah, but the picture's too big and I couldn't resize it, and so sorry about that. Thank you again to all of you who donated. We are going to, we're changing that little girl's life and really saving her life. I believe that with all my heart. So, God is working all around you, and it just takes a willingness to join him in what he's doing. And I'm just so gratified to know that there are so many people out there who are so generous, that love this concept with the hot zone of being able to reach through the technology I can bring you a need from some war zone or disaster area all across the world, and you all just step right up and help those people. You're always so generous to do that. So God bless you. And you will be blessed for that. I really believe that. I believe that with all my heart. Anyway, all right, we're going to move on and keep going here. The ceasefire enters effect. Yes, last night. So the hostilities are paused. Israeli withdrawal from Gaza is going to be to designated lines. And so Trump will visit Israel Sunday. And during the trip, he's slated to meet not just with the prime minister, but with the families of the hostages. He's also expected to address the Knesset on Sunday. He'll be there for about 24 hours. The Jerusalem Post is reporting that Hamas agreed to the deal after being convinced that retaining the hostages had become a burden. Now, that's interesting because the question is, a burden for whom? We all know that the hostages were the only leverage that Hamas had in this war. They're losing tremendously on the battlefield, very, very badly. And so who were they a burden to? Now, I mentioned this in my podcast a couple of days ago. I think, I imagine, again, this is speculation on my part. This has not been reported, but I'm just reading between the lines here. Somebody had to put pressure on Hamas to do this. And I think there were a lot of somebodies. I think Qatar and Egypt were putting pressure on Hamas. And I think also Iran was putting pressure on Hamas. I think in reality, the remaining hostages had become a burden more to Iran and to Qatar than they had been to Hamas. Now, Hamas was seeing the writing on the wall as Israel pushed into Gaza City. They knew that they were going to lose the hostages one way or the other, and that the hostages were likely going to be killed in the, fight for Gaza City, killed or, lost, and or rescued. And either way, that would be bad for Hamas. So the calculus started to shift because of the military pressure and the diplomatic pressure. The calculus started to shift for Hamas, and they said, really, the best thing we can do with these hostages at this point is to give them back and make ourselves look magnanimous. We get to survive because Israel will agree to stop killing us. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. So if we don't give the hostages back, we are definitely going to, Israel's going to continue killing us until they've wiped us out as much as possible. So if there's any chance of survival, this is the only chance. And we're getting calls from the people that used to support us. And I really believe that President Trump or Israel might have called Iran through a back channel and gave them the message that if the hostages, if Hamas does not agree to this deal, there's going to be more bombs falling on Iran. We're going to decimate what's left of your economy. And Iran is like, they don't want that to happen. So they joined in the pressure on Hamas. That's my guess. I don't know. What do you think? Is that too far fetched or what? So, uh, appreciate all of you who are donating there, Richard, and I see the super chats coming in. I'm just trying to get through all of this monologue. I mean, I've got a lot more here. Uh, so moving on, the polls in Israel, what do they think about it? Of course, obviously, Israelis are super happy about what's been announced. They are cautious because the hostages have not been released yet. They're expecting them to be released by about noon on Monday, because that would be the 72 hours from when the deal was signed. And they're cautious. Why? Because Hamas has done this before, where they use the hostages for psychological torture of the Israeli people. Now, they've already agreed that they're not going to do the crazy, ceremonies that they did the last time back in March, where they paraded the hostages in front of a bunch of uniformed Hamas fighters and, made them hold up certificates of graduation from hostagedom. I don't know. I don't know what that was all about. But they promised not to do that this time. They're just going to turn them over to the Red Cross, and the Red Cross is going to bring them out. But again, in Israel, they are cautiously optimistic. They're hoping that this is going to be, it's going to go down like they say it will. Now, Israel has agreed, as part of the first phase of this deal, to pull back to this area here. You see on the map, the area in yellow will be the area that Israel continues to hold. And so essentially, Gaza has just gotten a lot smaller. And think of it like what is going on in what happened after the Oslo Accords in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank. They have A zones, B zones, and C zones. I see some of you that are still donating over at Give, Send, Go for Leah. That's so nice of you. Thank you so much for that. So, they have in Judea and Samaria these A zones, which are controlled by the Palestinian Authority and are policed by the Palestinian Authority. There's no IDF involvement in the A zones at all. No Israeli government in there. The B zones are administered by the Palestinian Authority, but are protected by the IDF because they're transition spaces where Israeli citizens have to move through to get to the C zones where they live. In the C zones, Israelis can live there, and it is administered and also protected by the IDF. So now in Gaza, we're going to have essentially the brown area, the small brown area along the coast there, is going to be an A zone. There's going to be no Israeli troops or presence in there. Then the yellow area will be like a B zone, and then some parts of that will actually be even like a C zone, where there will be no Palestinians allowed to go at all. And it will be completely, for the time being, administered and protected by the IDF. And they are going to stay in 58% of the Gaza Strip until Hamas has been completely dismantled. Now, here's where things might break down with this ceasefire, because some of this is ambiguous. Like they haven't drawn out yet exactly which parts of Gaza Israel will withdraw from, what buffer zones will be in place, or what control zones Israel will keep after Hamas is dismantled. So they've also not quite worked out yet who will assume security and policing authority in Gaza after the complete withdrawal. It won't be Hamas. It won't be the Palestinian Authority, most likely. It'll most likely be something of an international effort or some hybrid force. Now, in the initial phase, they've agreed, part of the agreement is that they'll put together an international peacekeeping force that will include U.S. troops. And so there's been a lot of reporting that U.S. troops were going to be on the ground, boots on the ground in Gaza, which would not be popular with Americans, but that's not actually the case. President Trump is going to send about 200 U.S. troops to Israel, and they're going to establish a center just outside the Gaza Strip to help with the handover, to help with the transition. Okay, so it's going to be like a transition center that's going to be run by U.S. troops. I don't know why we need U.S. troops to do that. Sounds like something that civilians could do. Gaza Humanitarian Foundation maybe could do something like that. Why? I don't know why we have to send more U.S. troops. For the time being, there's been no mention of removing the up to 2,000 U.S. troops that are already serving in Israel in a defensive capacity, watching the skies with radar, manning the missile batteries, the THAAD missile batteries that are down there in the Negev and places like that. So a lot of people don't know that or forget that. There are a couple thousand U.S. troops on the ground in Israel that have been there for more than a year. Okay, so they still have to work out the actual mechanism for verifying the hostages. For Hamas getting the hostages out, because they have said that there are some that are missing, at least the dead ones. They can't find all of the deceased Israeli hostages, and so there's going to have to be a mechanism for allowing Hamas to search areas that are under IDF control without the IDF killing them, without clashes there. They still have to work out how the aid distribution is going to take place. They've said that they're going to open up the aid crossings. And apparently even the Rafah crossing is going to open up with Egypt. But how that reconstruction and aid distribution, border crossing control, and the resource allocation is going to be governed has yet to be worked out. So what can we expect in the coming days and weeks? Well, we're going to see these hostage exchanges begin, hopefully Saturday, Sunday, Monday. They're going to be staged in batches. There's going to be batches of living hostages coming out. What they do is they bring them, they put them on as soon as they get under IDF control. They check them out and see if there are any immediate medical needs that need to be met for them to be able to survive to get to the hospital. Then if they are in critical condition, they'll put them in a helicopter and fly them right to the Soroka Hospital in Beersheba and treat them there. If they're in better condition and they're ambulatory or whatever, they're not in a critical condition, they will actually drive them to the border of Gaza to a transition center that they have set up and will allow them to have a brief meeting with their family members to reunite them. And as they get checked out there, and then they will be sent to the hospital, be driven to the hospital. And so that then the critical condition ones, their families will meet them at the Soroka Hospital. Okay. So the coordination center that the U.S. troops are going to be putting together is to help manage the flow of aid, is to track compliance with the ceasefire, and to mediate any disputes. That's where the U.S. troops come in. Trump, as I said, is going to address the Knesset and meet with Netanyahu and the families of the hostages. This trip is symbolic and strategic. He's going to claim to be the one who made this happen, and in large part he is. Now, he did not win the Nobel Peace Prize. They've announced that Maria Machado of Venezuela, she's one of the opposition figures for in Venezuela. She won the Nobel Peace Prize this year, and she definitely deserved it. But I would say so did President Trump as well. Now, the reasons that the Nobel Committee gave for not giving it to President Trump were, number one, all of the nominations for the Nobel Peace Prize that when Trump was nominated by Israel and others came after the deadline for nominations, which passed on January 31st. They also have a history, the Nobel Committee, of being extremely left wing, and so they're not going to like President Trump, and that's going to give him kind of stack the deck against him a little bit. They also are known to avoid giving the Nobel Peace Prize to people who are desperately seeking the Nobel Peace Prize, and I don't think anybody could deny that President Trump has been desperately seeking the Nobel Peace Prize. Would have been more likely for him to get it if he had not sought it and just let other people, as the Bible says, let other people sing your praises. It's better for you to remain silent and let other people tell about how great you are. But President Trump hasn't read that verse apparently, or doesn't take that to heart. Political fallout in Israel. Netanyahu is rising in the polls. He's obviously riding high on this. This is a victory. They've actually accomplished one of the two major goals of the invasion, and that was to get their hostages back. And at least they will have accomplished it if the hostages get released. And so his coalition, he may call snap elections because he's going to try to stabilize his grip on power. A lot of Israelis are upset about this. They're saying this is a very bitter pill to swallow for them. Why? Because as a part of the deal, Israel is having to turn over 2,000 Palestinian murderers, prisoners, people who have been in jail for years, life sentences for murder, who have murdered, 20 or 30 Israelis. And so there are a lot of Israelis that are not happy with that. And so there may be some backlash over that on the Israeli government. I know that Ben Gvir yesterday was ranting at Steve Witkoff about this, and it is what it is. I mean, this is what they've agreed to do. We may see some small ceasefire violations. We just had, after the ceasefire was announced yesterday, an IDF soldier was killed by a sniper. So we're going to keep an eye open for that. The good thing is, once Israel gets its hostages back, then in reality, they are free to continue striking Hamas. And this would not be a ceasefire violation any more than what Israel's been doing in Lebanon ever since the ceasefire there has happened is a violation. Actually, what Israel is free to do is to continue striking at threats to its safety even after the ceasefire takes effect. So, for example, if they see heavily armed, groups of Hamas fighters moving around in Gaza, they can drone strike those guys and take them out. If they...
Can you take the map down?
Oh, is the map still up? Sorry. Thank you. This is why I need a producer. So they are going to continue striking at Hamas if and when they see a reason to do so, and that does not constitute a ceasefire violation. As a matter of fact, Amir Tsarfati points out that, let's see, the Houthis are firing drones again today. That's nice. That's great. I just lost the thing. Anyway, Amir Tsarfati had pointed out that the United States had given guarantees to Israel that they could go back to striking Hamas if Hamas uh, poses a threat. So we've got footage of the IDF pulling back. And there are celebrations that have been taking place in Gaza. Now I'm going to play this. I'm going to turn the audio down because it's super loud. These people are screaming Allahu Akbar and claiming victory. So take a look. This is that crazy guy that he's the TikTok Hamas guy. He's been alternately a deceased person. He's been a influencer. He's been a soldier. He's been a press guy, and he's been seen in lots of videos. He's died about 16 times. He's been wounded many times. You see him in the hospital. Oh, I'm dying, and then the next thing he's like, wearing a press vest. But you saw there they're very happy. The evening that the ceasefire was announced, let's see, Israel, the night celebrations there. Now I want you to see that. I'm going to rewind this, and I'm going to try to stop it. Right? No. You see a green flag go by. They are studiously avoiding. There we go. No, they're studiously avoiding showing them. But there are plenty of Hamas flags that are being waved in Gaza right now. I told you we were going to see that. It's likely after the hostages get released, you're going to see Hamas fighters in uniform perhaps with weapons, celebrating in the streets, being feted as heroes. What this tells you is that even though this is what Gaza looks like, the people in Gaza think that they won. To them, this is victory. They are claiming victory over Israel. They are like, we struck Israel, and Israel did not wipe us out. Now, this also gives the lie to the whole famine narrative and genocide narrative. Now the war is ending after 2 years. And after 2 years, there are more people in Gaza than there were at the beginning of the war. The UN came out and said yesterday that they have enough stocks to feed the entirety of Gaza for 3 months. And just the day before, they were saying that there was still famine in Gaza. So I think the UN just admitted to withholding food from hungry people in Gaza. That's the way I would read that. And last but not least, I got to get to this because this is just so good. In various cases, I've been pointing this out throughout the war, but there have been these naysayers throughout the war who have been not calling for Israel's destruction, saying Israel is being destroyed. Israel will not survive. Israel is losing the war. And I just wanted to go back because some of these tweets did not age very well. So take a look at this one, for example. This is Scott Ritter on X. And this is a post from several months ago where he said, Israel is self-destructing before our very eyes. The world now sees it for what it is, an apartheid, genocidal, colonial enterprise. Well, guess what? The Israelis are pulling out of Gaza. Israelis are turning against each other. I don't know where he's seeing that. Israelis are fleeing. The economy is collapsing. Tourists refuse to visit. I actually took a tour group of 44 people to Israel a year ago. Hamas is undefeated. Hezbollah is winning. The IDF refuses to fight. Iran can destroy Israel at will. Israel will be gone before the next decade is out, and the world will rejoice. Hopefully, you'll be there to experience this moment firsthand. That was just under a year ago. That was 11 months ago. For one of many tweets like this from Scott Ritter, and he's still saying it. I mean, when I did a search with Grok for anything negative Ritter has said about the Israeli war effort, there were like at least 50 posts that he's made like this, where he's just like, everything is falling apart in Israel. They're losing. The IDF is, crumbling. They're, and here we go. So this is, and he's not the only one. The other one that I got is Colonel McGregor. Let's see if I can find that one. I'm pretty sure I put that in here. So celebrations in Gaza, 3 months of food. Maybe I missed it.
Tell me
I
about.
got no. I
Have
think
you
I
been?
missed it.
Lately I've been.
No, sorry. I'm going to have to stick that in here. This is a quote from Colonel McGregor. Well, I'll just read it to you. How about that? Where Colonel McGregor says that there will be no, this is several months ago. Colonel McGregor said, there will be no negotiated settlement with Hamas. Israel will destroy everything. They're going to genocide the Palestinians, and there will be no negotiated settlement with Hamas. And so Colonel McGregor looking like a fool as usual as well. So, folks, I think the lesson there is you shouldn't bet against Israel. Now, lastly, we need to talk about, is this the end? I think the war is not completely over. The war is going to be over in Gaza. As you can see, though, there is no ceasefire with the Houthis. The Houthis are still firing drones and missiles at Israel. So there's going to be more bombs going off in Yemen. There may be more fighting directly with Iran. The United States still has, built up forces over there. Now, that build up may have been to put pressure on Iran, to put pressure on Hamas to get this done. But there is still a possibility of a kinetic conflict between Israel and Iran. There is likely to be more shooting going on against Hezbollah because Israel is still committed to dismantling Hezbollah. There are still going to be more raids and operations that take place in Judea and Samaria. And we might see more in Syria as well. So it's not completely over. This is a fragile thing here. But for today, at least, I think we can call this a win in Israel's column. No matter what Hamas says, no matter what the Palestinians in Gaza say, they did not win this war. 80% plus of all the buildings in Gaza have been destroyed. Hamas or Israel is not committed to pulling out completely from Gaza until Hamas is disarmed and disbanded. They've offered asylum or safe passage to Hamas if they want to go to Turkey or some other country that'll have them. But that doesn't mean that this is going to end. Once they get their hostages back, there's nothing stopping Israel from finishing the job. And so I think that this is likely to continue for some time. Okay, that's all I've got for today, folks. I don't have time for questions. I'm sorry. I got to go pick up.
Yes, you do.
I do?
The plane's been delayed.
Oh, the plane was delayed. Okay, great. Fantastic. We do have time for questions. Before I get to your questions, I want to point out, I just let you know, I've got another YouTube channel that I started that's much more fun. It's not as depressing as all the, wars and disasters and everything. I go to, as you know, 25 countries a year around the globe, travel to lots of beautiful places. We're in a beautiful place now. The fall colors here in Maine are incredible. And so I put together another YouTube channel where I just show you the beautiful side of what I get to see. And if you like to walk on a treadmill, use a rower, anything like that where you're indoors working out, these are perfect because they're long form. It's just me. It's not me. You don't see me. I'm just walking and filming what I get to see when I go for hikes and walks and stuff. So everything from, I'm going to show you here, Bellagio. This is a Where'd it go? This is just a short video of one of the videos I put up from this summer where we were in Lake Como in Italy. And it's just, point of view. You get to watch. Let me turn down the audio there. You get to just, as if you are there with me, you get to follow along and see a lot of incredibly beautiful stuff. And so go to Borderline Global Adventures here on YouTube, at Borderline Global Adventures on YouTube. The link is in the description of this video. And do me a favor, even if you're not going to watch it, just go subscribe to that for me, because I got to get my numbers up so I can monetize that channel. But it's going to be a lot of fun, and we're filming a lot of great content I haven't even had a chance to put up yet. Anyway, I just wanted to point that out. Now, let's get over to your questions. We'll see here if we can find my question sheet. Thank you for all of you who are continuing to generously give over on Leah's Give, Send, Go there. That's pretty amazing. Why can't I find this link? Connie, can you post that link again? The link to the question sheet. Oh, here it is. I got it. I got it. Okay.
Maybe.
Okay. Saul to Paul says, who's GHF? GHF is the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the American NGO that's passing out food in Gaza. I may still go into Gaza and visit them now that this is over. I may not. We just have to wait and see if they will allow me in. Thank you, Janie, Leona Gibson. You guys are great. Appreciate you, Ezra Byerly, for all the, thank you for the super chat. Super thanks. Nate Moore says, how might the disarming process practically work if it happens? That's a very good question. It's very unlikely that Gaza will disarm. Whenever they have one of these disarmament things, what you see is a bunch of old broken weapons get turned in, and the good weapons get hoarded and buried and hidden. And they're not just not wanting to turn in their weapons because they want to continue fighting Israel, but because they're going to be fighting each other. You're going to see a lot more violence flaring up in Gaza as they have fights between these various tribes and families and militias that have arisen in Gaza, challenging Hamas's rule. And it bears pointing out that whoever controls the aid controls Gaza. So if Hamas continues to get hold of the aid that the UN is bringing in and then give it to the people, only the people they want, or sell it in the marketplace, then Hamas will have de facto control over Gaza, and that will continue. Mike Silva says, will this peace deal affect the war in Ukraine? I don't think so. Russia struck Kyiv very hard last night, killed a 7-year-old girl. They struck all of their power infrastructure once again and knocked out about half of Kyiv, knocked out power for and heat for about half of Kyiv. Israel is a terrorist. I'm sorry, Israel. What am I saying? Russia is a terrorist state, and they are proving it every day in Ukraine. So I'm going to have to get back over to Ukraine again, too, to report on that conflict. Yahweh Lover says, for Hamas, this deal is a setup for something big. Could it be a perfect setup for maximum damage? Do we really believe they won't go out with a bang, one last blow for their God, the Antichrist? I can't say I disagree with you there. I am very skeptical that Hamas is just going to, fade away. Not going to happen. Nicholas Dupree says, do you worry Hamas might not follow through or take this opportunity to do something bad to the hostages? Yes, I do. What would happen if that goes sideways? Well, you'll see the fighting resume immediately, and Gaza City will be completely taken over, and it's going to be a lot more, blood and death and destruction. Thank you, Too Strange, and thank you, Eric. Thank you for donating for Leah there. LA says, isn't Gaza only 25 miles long as it is now? Actually less, the part that the people can live in. Gaza is 35 miles long, 5 miles wide. But Jim Bellingham says, how do you know Hamas has left? We know they have not left. Hamas is still in Gaza. They're still in control of parts of Gaza, and they still have several thousand fighters in Gaza, and they still have weapons, although not as many as they did before. So if you want to talk about like what could derail this, well, if we see Hamas firing more missiles out of Gaza, you can bet there's going to be more fighting. Israel will respond, and rightly so. If Israel does not receive all their hostages back as promised, you can bet they're going to be more fighting. So we're just going to have to wait and see. Matt Dog says, what will Trump's role be in the new Palestinian government? And is it constitutional for him to participate in another country's government? President Trump is not going to participate in another country's government. He said that he would be on the advisory committee for the peace plan, whatever they're putting together. He nominated himself for that. I don't know if he'll actually do it, but there's nothing that says President Trump can't, especially after he's no longer president. He could go on. Heck, he could maybe run for president in Israel at this point because he's very popular there. But we'll see. KP1 says, if this hasn't been addressed, we are hearing Hamas trying to kidnap IDF soldiers. Any chance they're trying to get fresh people to keep this mess alive? They certainly want to. We have seen them try to do that multiple times, and yet it has not. They've not been successful at that. But you can bet, whether it's in Gaza, in Judea and Samaria, Hebron, in the north part of Israel, an incursion from Lebanon by Hezbollah, the remnants of Hezbollah, you can bet that there will be more hostages taken at some point. And I pointed this out the other day. It is very likely that we will see hostages taken in other places around the world. So Israeli tourists in Greece taken hostage, or Americans taken hostage. Because if this war has proved anything, it's that taking hostages is a surefire way to bring some sort of parity between two vastly different combat forces. So one that's much more powerful, one that's much weaker. They can bring some sort of parity by having those hostages as bargaining tools. You just have to be as brutal and heartless as Hamas to do it. So hostage taking is not going away. And I think it will only expand because of this war. Now, Debbie says, I thought it was all hostages at once, not a few at a time. Well, it is supposed to be all of them at once, but keep in mind the logistics of doing that is going to be pretty hard because Hamas has to go around to a bunch of different places and find them, and then get them all together. So it's likely that we're going to see all of them released within maybe a 2-day time period, but probably not 20 of them all at one time. That remains to be seen. We'll have to wait and see. Patrick Wickersheim says, will you and others be allowed to be there reporting? I hope so. I'm going to try to get in. Travis Porter says, Chuck, give a shout out to my son, Kane Porter. We're listening together. Hey, Kane, thank you for listening to the Hot Zone. You must have a great dad for him to introduce you to important stuff like this and not just let you sit there and play Grand Theft Auto for your entire life. So God bless you, Kane, and have a good time. Adrian says, what's going to happen to all the Israeli settlers who were on the border? Are they going to cross and move in now that the border has shrunk for Gaza? There has been talk about reestablishing settlements in Gaza, but nothing has been finalized on that. And I think it's unlikely. There are a lot of people who believe it should happen, but I don't think that it's likely that it will happen. I think the world is going to put too much pressure on Israel not to do that. Okay, so again, thank you all for being a part of the Hot Zone, for continuing to. So somebody just said news just broke of a Qatari Air Force facility in Mountain Home, Idaho. Your thoughts? I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that as an Idahoan. I haven't heard anything about that. Um, Look, you got to take these things with a grain of salt. Do you really think the United States would allow a foreign entity like Qatar to have an Air Force base in Idaho? Likely, it's more like something like there are some Qatari Air Force uh, pilots who are in Idaho training because we do joint training with our allies all the time. And so at any given time, there are members of other foreign militaries from Turkey and from Qatar and from Kuwait and from Saudi Arabia and all kinds of places around the globe that have their forces in the United States training with U.S. troops and getting skills taught to them. So I don't get your undies too much in a wad over that yet until we find out more information about that. But anyway, thank you all for watching. I appreciate all of you. I hope you have a great weekend. I'm going to be spending time doing some hiking and some shopping and stuff around here in Maine. And we will see you back here on Monday. Please make sure to visit our sponsor. A lot of people keep asking. They send me emails and they say, I heard you talk about this gold thing, but I didn't write it down. Write it down. preservegold.com/hotzone. That was all the questions I saw. Do you want me to let me refresh? I'll refresh the questions here and see if there's any more. No, that was the last one, unless you put it up at the top.
Did you answer the one in yellow? Down at the bottom.
Yellow.
Go down.
Yeah, that give a shout out to my son, Kane Porter. Yeah, I sure did.
It's from Kamel.
No, tell what is it? What does it say? Oh, hey. Oh, that's very tiny. How do we as conservatives counter the bogus narratives and evil propaganda spouted by Candace Owens, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson, Matt Getz, and Megyn Kelly are also gaslighting? I think you just have to keep telling the truth, unashamedly, unabashedly. I'm committed to do that as much as possible on social media, put it out there, answer their tweets, tell them what clowns they are, point out where they are wrong. That's why I keep bringing up guys like McGregor and Ritter, because not because I want to give them oxygen, but because when somebody is spreading lies, they need to be called out. And so I think you should do that. Don't be afraid. And as I said before, I'm going to start wearing a Star of David or something just to show solidarity with the Israelis. Uh, June says how to deal with those tunnels, Hamas hiding, traveling, etc. You can bet they're going to continue to look for those uh, and destroy them if they find them. That does not go on. Okay. Oh, now my question thing just updated. Melissa Johnson says, are there plans for re-education? They've talked about it, but I'm not sure how they're going to do that. UNRWA obviously is not going to be able to operate in Israel anymore. They may still be in Gaza, but it will be interesting to see how the schools get rebuilt in Gaza and what the curriculum, if they continue to train children in Gaza to hate and want to kill Jews, then we're just going to have another one of these sometime down the road. Debbie says, where does all the food and provisions given to Gaza Palestinians come from? It gets donated by various countries. Even Israel has donated food. The United States has donated food. Lots of countries around the world donate the food, and it gets sent into Gaza. Charlene Benjamin says, Hamas says they can't find all the deceased hostages. My question is, how does Israel know they're truly dead, maybe even tortured? Well, it's Israel has ways of knowing these things that they don't talk about, that we shouldn't talk about on a public forum. So they definitely have better knowledge of whether or not they're dead or alive than we do, but it is possible. There's a non-zero chance that some of them might be still alive. But I think Israel's knowledge is pretty Um, it's pretty good. Cheryl Miller says, "Do you see replacement theory as a backdoor for anti-Israel propaganda?" I'm going to pass on that question. Last time I talked about that, they just about kicked me off of YouTube. So I'm going to be careful about that. Maybe I'll do that over on Locals. Oh, I forgot to mention, folks, we put in a lot of extra stuff. If you want to see the full interview with Leah and her dad, you can see it over on Locals. We're going to put it up over there. And it'll only be there for supporters. And so you want to get okay. How do we as conservatives counter the bogus narrative? Okay, I already got that. Okay, so I think that's all. Make sure you go to chuckholton.com. There's a lot of extra content up there, a lot of good stuff for you. And we